Okay, so whenever the government shuts down, all the headlines are about the political drama, right? But what are the real costs? We're going to go beyond the talk in Washington and unpack the actual, measurable impacts this has on the country.
We hear the phrase government shutdown all the time, but what does it actually mean? For the economy, for government workers, for regular people? Let's cut through all the political noise and just look at the hard facts.
So here's where things stand. The Senate has tried to pass a government funding bill not once, not twice, but 7 times. And every single time it has failed. They are completely stuck, voting on the exact same thing over and over with zero progress. It's a total deadlock. And here's the math behind the problem. To get the bill passed, you need 60 votes in the Senate. The last vote, it only got 54. See, with Republicans holding 53 seats, neither side can do it alone. They absolutely have to find a way to work together. And, well, right now, that's just not happening. So what's the big holdup? Well, it really comes down to 2 totally different visions. On one side, you have Republicans who want to just pass a simple temporary funding extension for 7 weeks. No changes, just kick the can down the road. On the other side, you have Democrats who are saying no way. They want a permanent extension of Obamacare subsidies, and they want to reverse recent Medicaid cuts. And neither side is willing to budge. This political fight has some immediate, real-world consequences. And the first major one? The shutdown creates what's basically an economic data blackout. It's like someone just turns off the lights on the information that everyone, from Wall Street investors to small business owners, depends on. For instance, 2 absolutely critical economic reports were scheduled to come out in October. You had the jobs report on the 3rd, which tells us how healthy our job market is, and then the CPI inflation report on the 15th. Because of the shutdown, neither one got published. Now you might be thinking, all right, our report's a little late. What's the big deal? Well, that inflation report, the Consumer Price Index, or CPI, it's not just some number for economists to argue about. It directly affects the wallets of millions and millions of Americans. And here's just how big of a deal it is. 73 million. That is how many people getting Social Security rely on that exact CPI data to calculate their annual cost of living adjustment. Their COLA. If there's no data, there's no adjustment. And that is a huge problem. So the government was up against a legal deadline, not to mention a whole lot of pressure from those 73 million voters. Their solution? They had to declare an emergency, basically calling back a skeleton crew of employees just to crunch the numbers for the CPI report and get that Social Security adjustment calculated. It was a temporary patch, but the larger problem was still there. Okay, so let's shift gears from data to the people. This shutdown is creating a ton of uncertainty for federal workers, and it's really important to understand the 2 very different things they could be facing. First, there's a furlough. This is the word we hear most often. A furlough is basically a temporary, unpaid leave of absence. The really important part is that when the government reopens, these folks are supposed to come back to their jobs and get back pay for the time they were out. But then, there's something much more serious. It's called a reduction in force, or a RIF. This is not a temporary leave. A RIF is a permanent job cut. It's a layoff. There's no back pay because there's no job to come back to. Let's just put these 2 side by side because the difference couldn't be more stark. A furlough is a temporary pause. You expect to go back to work and get paid for the missed time. A RIF, on the other hand, is a permanent layoff. Your job is gone. And during the shutdown, we are not just talking about furloughs. And look, this isn't just a possibility. Russell Vaught, the director of the Office of Management and Budget, said it loud and clear. The RIFs have begun. His office even confirmed that the cuts are substantial. That means people are losing their jobs permanently right now because of this shutdown. This all leads to another huge divide that the shutdown creates. Who's getting paid and who isn't? And there is a major difference between how the military is being treated versus the civilian federal workforce. As people started to worry that U.S. troops might not get their paychecks, the president stepped in. He used his authority as commander-in-chief to make sure the military got paid on time, saying his administration had found the money to make it happen. So what you end up with is this really stark contrast. On October 15th, active duty military members got their paychecks. But more than 2 million civilian federal employees, they didn't. They went without pay, which, as you can imagine, creates incredible financial stress for families all over the country. So when you look at the data blockouts, the job losses, the missed paychecks, it begs the question, who does the public actually blame for all this disruption? Well, according to a recent Reuters poll, there's actually no single bad guy in the eyes of the public. The blame is spread pretty evenly across the board. The poll shows that people are holding the president, the Republican Party, and the Democratic Party all responsible for the mess. And really, that's what it all comes down to. While the politicians are debating and posturing in Washington, the real costs are being felt by everyone else. By the seniors waiting on their cost of living adjustments, by federal workers who are now facing permanent layoffs, and by families who are just trying to figure out how to get by without a paycheck. It really leaves you with one big question to think about.